What's up, LEGO builders? My LEGO city has been ravaged by war, and even though the humans won, they still need to clean up the abandoned mechs and fix the damage caused from the fighting. So today, I'm going to turn random LEGO sets into the beginnings of a full-on fleet of construction mechs that'll help rebuild the city and destroy it a little, but that's on purpose, mostly. If you're ready, don't forget to open fire on that like button, and let's get building. I'm kicking things off with set number 60450, the yellow construction wheel loader, a 4+ set that's apparently going to teach me how to build. This is my first time coming across LEGO's eco-friendly packaging for all the bags, which is nice to see, though I don't buy too many sets these days, so maybe this is more common than I realize. By the way, I'm not doing an alternate build challenge here. Instead, I'll be using as many of the pieces as I can while pulling the rest from my collection. And there's one more thing to set up before we really dive in. A little nugget of lore, if you will. I want to go over the in-universe explanation for why more human-built mechs are starting to appear. After the war for the megacity of Moenia Prime was won by the HADF, the final battlefield between them and the Quadrant aliens became a hive of activity. The area was littered with the remains of mechs and other machines that had either been destroyed or abandoned as the Quadrants fled. Now, HADF and other non-military recovery teams are grabbing everything they can for further research and development. All this new technology suddenly hitting the different sectors will lead to what is later referred to as the Great Mech Boom. One company in particular, called Behemoth, really cashed in. Acquiring a lot of tech from the military, they specialize in designing and producing heavy-duty construction and mining equipment, and are one of the biggest companies in these fields. So there's a mutual interest between them and the government in producing a line of construction mechs specialized for working in urban environments, namely Moenia Prime. And that finally brings us up to speed and back to the current build. This isn't going to look like any of my previous mechs, which have been designed for war by factions that are much more familiar with mech design philosophy. So I want it looking chunky and simple. Its function will be as a general purpose machine with a build like a golem or giant, because I want something wide and imposing that can handle the wear and tear of large job sites. So no slender Gundam style mechs around here. The build will have an open cockpit since the operator won't be taking much enemy fire, hopefully, and I'm gonna build a pretty standard cockpit with a seat and a couple of controls at the center of the body. The green round 1x2 plates represent suspension for the seat to help ease the ride a little for the operator, and I placed a lever on either side since the steering wheel included in the set won't be much help here. To help beef up the chest area some more, I added 2 sets of clips which will hold shield pieces at an angle, and I figured this would also be a good spot to throw in some lights for those late night shifts. I was actually surprised with how many good pieces came in this small 4+ set. This yellow molded front piece was supposed to be the front of the loader, but it'll make a great chest plate, covering up the front of the cockpit and providing a connection point for the roll cage frame, which will protect the operator, which also comes from the set. The back will just have a bunch of slopes and panels where the power source is housed, and the bigger I make it, the beefier the mech will look. I'm thinking a mech of this caliber is going to need a nickname like Hercules or Hulk. In an effort to make good use of as many pieces from the set as I can, I decided to turn the wheels into massive shoulder pads, making this build look more like an NFL linebacker, but having worked on job sites myself for many years, the more protection you have, the better. I came across a really cool elbow technique used by a friend of mine named Slipstream73 on Instagram. He used rounded 2x2 plates and connected 2 Technic pin pieces to it and capped the whole thing off with another round plate. And let me tell you, the range of motion this little build provides is crazy. You can never have enough greebling or fun detailing on a mech, so I thought it would be cool to have some minifig sized tools attached to the arm for easy access by other construction workers. I wanted at least one of the hands to look a little unusual, so I'm building a 3-fingered gripping claw similar to what you'd see on a dreadnought from Warhammer 40k that can also function as a drill. The other arm is essentially going to look the same, except it has a more standard hand with 3 fingers and a thumb. Once all the various components are built, it's time to assemble the mech and add a few more pieces to the upper torso to better hide the ball joint connection point and fill out the upper shoulders some more. The original set also had a couple lights that'll go great perched atop the finished shoulders, and this mech is ready to hit the streets. The Heavy Response Suit, or HRS-3, is part of Behemoth's new fleet of construction mechs that have been contracted to help rebuild Moenia Prime. Its primary role is that of a heavy lifter, carrying materials, lifting beams, or clearing debris. Its massive frame and heavy-set legs can withstand extremely heavy weights, and the legs can lock into place for extra stability when setting beams or other large objects. Instead of tools being directly connected to the ends of the arms, the HRS-3 has 2 hands, allowing it to pick up and handle a variety of different things, and the left claw can also spin to function as a drill when needed. That, combined with the right arm, which has a deployable jackhammer, also makes this mech a one-man wrecking crew. This next set threw a pretty fun little curveball at me. 60478 Cement Truck had what I thought would be the makings of a decent dump truck, using the 2 halves of the massive drum as a bed. But To my dismay, when I opened it up, I saw the drums are in fact solid, not hollow. And a dump truck with no bed is about as effective as the 501st Legion with no plot armor. So it's back to the drawing board. In the meantime, I can build a generic 4-legged body to get started. I decided to go with 4 legs because I want this to be a much larger vehicle, and the 2 extra legs will provide more support for heavy-duty construction site tasks. So I built a couple of panels that'll attach to the side and cover up that gap between the ball joints. And now at least I've got the beginnings of a solid body. This set has over 300 pieces, so I have a lot more options to work with, and I like the idea of this build having a cab similar to the cement truck. The interior will have your typical control setup, but I'm putting the seat on a turntable so it can rotate around and access controls behind the operator similar to the setup of a backhoe. I want to try and break the mold with this build and create something a little unexpected and fun, and hopefully a little play feature in the cab will help. To make the cab a little bit more interesting and differentiate it from the cement mixer cab, I'm going to flip the windshield piece upside down so it juts up and out, using some brackets to connect it to the front panel. This will hold lights, Behemoth's logo, and a bumper for good measure. This roof piece has a little sunroof so the operator can see up above him, which I think is going to come in handy as you'll see in a little bit. And now the completed cab can easily attach to the front of the body. Alright, it's time to address the drums and function of this machine. It would be a shame not to include these pieces in the build somehow because of how big and prominent they are. Plus, I'm trying to use as many of the interesting parts as I can. With the dump truck option a no-go, I had to think about what other large construction vehicles would be needed in a city job site, and eventually inspiration struck. After assembling the drum, I built a platform lined with 2 Technic bricks that had smaller Technic beams attached vertically. These will connect to the drum and allow it to swing back and forth, essentially creating a massive battering ram. Now before you Lord of the Rings fans get excited, sorry, I'm not about to assault the Great Gate, but I did realize a demolition vehicle of some kind would be needed to knock down the building remains in Moenia Prime so new ones could be built. Obviously, this one can't be used to take down large skyscrapers without getting squashed, but due to its immense size, this mech could still be able to tackle some pretty big ruins. And of course, this set had to have the most wheels possible that need to go somewhere, but I had an idea. Similar to the last mech, I'm going to use them as shields. I assembled this bar that had some 1x1 studs with little poles on them and attached the wheels to the studs, creating 2 strips of rubber shields. These will attach to the roof of the ram and deflect smaller chunks of debris off to the sides, protecting the machine. And before I hear how this wouldn't actually work, remember, this is all for a sci-fi mech. Let's not get too fixated on realism. All that's left now is to assemble the body, and who would have guessed this would have been a demolition mech? That's one thing I really like about doing these sets to Mox challenges. It forces me to think outside the realm of typical builds and work with pieces I wouldn't normally use, creating cool new designs. There's still one more obstacle to overcome: the legs. These were recovered from the battlefield and provided to Behemoth by the HADF military. They once belonged to a massive Titan-class mech that turned out to be a ship. The mech/ship body ejected the legs as it took off, with the remaining quadronids leaving these behind, which the engineers quickly repurposed for industrial use. Unfortunately, these legs are a little hard to attach. After my mental breakdown concluded, I returned, rebuilt, and shipped this nightmare off to Moenia Prime. Sometimes, before you can build a shiny new building, you have to remove the remains of an old Chuck E. Cheese or once glamorous tech company that was taken over by aliens. That is where the direct impact and restructuring machine nicknamed the Derm comes in handy. It's essentially a walking battering ram that's capable of flattening walls, silos, buildings, or even the local noodle shop if the operator isn't careful. Its 4 powerful legs maneuver into position until the ram is at the correct firing angle, then the driver spins around in his cab to access the ram controls. From here, he can see exactly what's going on via screens connected to these rear-mounted cameras. This allows him to be even more precise with the ram, hitting only the places needed for a controlled demolition. In the event of falling debris, 2 rows of rubber shields protect the back, causing anything short of a massive support beam to glance harmlessly off the sides. Just make sure no one's nearby. After getting over their initial fear of once again having mechs in the city, the citizens of Moenia Prime are in awe of how quickly they've prepped things for reconstruction. I'm pretty sure this is the first non-military/war themed building video I've ever put out on the channel, and I must say, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Who doesn't love massive sci-fi construction machines? And if you guys like this video, I just might do a part 2. That's a wrap for today, though don't forget to let me know what you think of these mechs in the comments, and until next time, happy building.